have a fun 60 minutes. And yes, you've probably just got a notification that we will record this session. There's usually a few people who say, oh, wish I could have seen that. Well, guess what, you can. Excellent. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start, this series is going to have lots of different themes, and we're going to ask you for your input on what we should talk about. But it seemed like a good starting point to talk about what should we do to adapt to the lockdown that's hit us. We could sort of see it coming. We knew it might happen, but actually it hit us pretty fast. And so we've just spent the last week all adapting and, doing what we needed to do. But let's have a think about what next. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of ideas about that, and then we're going to introduce our special guests, which is Serena Bird and Harold Dimple. And then I'm going to set you a little challenge, and then we'll be finished before 3 o'clock. Hope everyone's happy with that. I really thought a lot about in this broad topic of adapting your business to the challenges. Really, what should I get you thinking about? And really, the more I thought about it, I kept coming back to the key part of this is for you to figure out actually what's the problems or the risks or the challenges for your business. And they're going to be extremely different. They're going to be extremely different. One of you might have a shop and the customers literally can't physically come in and buy your product anymore. Another has a factory and you literally can't get into the factory to make your product anymore. And lots of us are, sort of virtual or mixed presences, and you can have slightly different things. Is your top challenge customers, keeping your relationships with them, making new sales? Is your top challenge, and it's important for pretty much everybody, looking after your team, making sure that they can, work effectively, safely, all of that sort of thing? Is it something about logistics? Boy, moving things around, getting parts, stuff like that. They can be super important. Or is it something that's slightly, sort of not the obvious? And one is distraction. If we're just really distracted by doing, the new COVID things and stuff like that, if we're really distracted by that, that's a risk. What should we be focusing on? I'm really going to ask everyone in the panel in a minute, what are the non-obvious risks for your business? What are the things that you should be thinking, what you're going to think, oh, I wish I'd thought about that. Or the subtle things, right? Now's the time to think, okay, yeah, that's the obvious. What's the subtle risks? And each of you I want you to be thinking, and maybe even write down a little note. Actually, here's what I think is the biggest risks for me. And we'll sort of come back to those discussions and try and turn them into real discussions. Maybe the biggest challenge that you faced today is exactly the same as the biggest challenge you faced before lockdown, because sometimes that just is, lockdown, doesn't shift really a big technical risk you have or customer risk you have. We've got to talk about people though. People, because typically the heart of the matter is people. And the tips I want to give you is first, the most important thing with people, and whether that be your team, your customers, business partners, other stakeholders in your, anywhere around what you're doing, I want you to think of them as people, not just as customers or not just as stakeholders. And we need to a little bit to understand their worlds. What's got them under pressure? What's got them worried? What are they struggling to deal with? And if we can understand that, then we can be realistic about what they can do, right? And if they're going to struggle to do something, can we make an adjustment to take that into account? And my last tip on that is, I think sometimes that's going to need you to be a bit creative, to think outside the box, to find a way to adjust in response to what their constraints are. You know, I think in the last lockdown, we found that some people working in a virtual environment became super productive and they got more done. But a lot of people didn't, and they got less done or different done. Zoom calls, you can bang through them. You can get a lot done in a day. You don't have to walk between meeting sites and off to your client and stuff like that. But there's a limit, right? And I think we have to be really, and so I want you to think about your team, your customers, not as a general matter, your business. Think about those people and really think, what's got them under pressure? Does that make me think I want to do something different? So I'm sort of surfing through my introductory points just to get people thinking. Now, when we've got to adapt our business to a crisis, and in this case, the crisis is the lockdowns, we always should be thinking about cash money. Cash money is what keeps a business alive. You should always know, as a business person, where are you at with your revenue? What are your costs? And most importantly, what runway do you have? How long will your savings last if you're earning less than you're spending? What I'm going to ask you to do in this sort of challenging environment is, how's that changed? Right? You knew what it was before. How's it changed? What do you think will happen? And how certain are you about that? Right? You might think your customers are going to buy less. You could be wrong. I know people, last time there was a lockdown, they ended up selling more than they expected, more than they did before, and all of their expectations were on the downside. It will vary. Take yourself back a week. What did you think would happen? And what did happen? Where was the gaps or differences? I want you to think about those gaps or differences. And when you understand where you're at, when you know what you're uncertain about, then you can start to make decisions around it. And you can think about, when you know your range of outcomes, your uncertainty, you can think, what's a worst case? What's a likely case? Okay, worst case, we'll have 30% cut in revenue. Best case or likely case, 10%, right? Now, work out the implications of that, and then what do you need to do? You're going to need to make decisions or change actions or do things. By the way, if you don't, not deciding is a decision, and sometimes it's the right decision. Wait and collect more information. I don't need to decide now. I don't need to, make a big, scary decision that I might regret later. But I want you to really be factoring in that the longer you wait, you're changing your options. That makes sense? By wait, and if you wait longer before you, for example, need to decide to cut costs, then you're going to have to cut them deeper than if you start a little earlier, just as one little example. So it's a trade-off. Now, all this is quite general stuff, but I thought I just wanted to sort of give you just a bit of an overview, and now let's really turn this into a bit of a discussion. And I'm going to invite Serena and Harold to unmute and sort of come part of the conversation. I'll turn off my PowerPoint slides, and I want you, the audience, to start thinking of some questions for them and for everyone to think about and discuss. So maybe we'll start with you, Serena. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself and any key thoughts you want to add to this conversation?
Oh, thank you so much for this opportunity. There is so much I could say, and I'm sure there's so much that everyone else can say. So I'm founder of the Joyful Frugalista, the Joyful Business Club, the Joyful Fashionista. So my whole brand is around joy, right? But let me just say that no one is joyful 100% of the time. And if anyone is going through this, either if they're in lockdown themselves and of isolation or affected otherwise, and they are not feeling joyful, well, that's actually pretty normal. There are times through this where I'm just stressed. And, you know, I think there's a lot of courage in saying, look, I'm not okay right now. Today is not a good day. So today is not the day that I'm going to be making big decisions. In my life, when I've gone through profound stress, and particularly, you know, as I left my first marriage due to domestic violence, I had a particular saying, which was one day at a time, one thing at a time. It is so easy to catastrophize. It is so easy if you listen to the media and see all the hotspots and the exposure sites and hear stories of friends who are in self-isolation and know people who are infected, to feel so worried about this. And you really do need to turn that off. And I think Craig said it really well. You need to really focus on the metrics of what's actually happening. Now, that's easier said than done because it's a mindset trick. And at the moment, mindset is more important than ever. And so a really good mantra is just having one day at a time, one thing at a time. Okay, there's all these things that are happening out there. But right now, today, what is the thing I need to do? It might be that you need to pay bills for your business. It might be that you need to do bookkeeping. Maybe you can't make a decision about an event that you were planning to do in October. Maybe you're not in a good mindset where you can, you know, sit down and creatively write a novel. But there are, one day at a time, one thing at a time, there are practical things that you can do, you know, to keep yourself forward. And then when you're in the right mindset, then you can make those bigger decisions. This is unprecedented disruption. We've seen it, you know, from the bushfires onward. And a lot of these trends were happening already, such as the trend towards digital trade, but certainly this disruption is making that happen faster than ever. There are winners and there are losers through this. Craig spoke of the risks. There are also opportunities. There are huge opportunities for people to make huge money from this. Of course, you can't do that if you're super stressed and you're having one of those days where you're catastrophizing. It's very hard to have the next $1 million entrepreneurial idea and the self-confidence within to pivot to do that. So before you can even think about pivoting, you have to deal with the mindset issues. I think I might turn over to Harold so I don't talk too much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Serena.
Thanks.
So, Harold.
Yeah, look, so most of you might know me, but so I run a company called Rocket Remit. We're a fintech company and we do money transfer mainly to developing countries. And we developed this technology called mobile money, which lets you send money to a basic feature phone. Oh, can you see it? No, you can't see it. No. A feature phone in my hand. To developing countries in Africa, Asia Pacific. So we're sort of an old startup, and we were part of the Kiln project. So we're an alumni of that. But look, I remember doing a similar thing last year, Craig, when we kicked these off last year. And we're saying just before, it's a bit different this year. It seems a bit more severe for Canberra. And look, maybe I'll just say a few things and then take over Craig, because we had a recent experience where we almost lost our company. So even before lockdown, so potentially. But look, one of the key things is, I don't know, personally, I've been sort of trying to not get too much involved in a lot of the politics of the lockdown stuff, because I know it can be a huge distraction about the injustice and all this sort of stuff, and why does it have to affect me? I mean, it really is such a time waster. And you know, I still, you know, like Serena was saying, I try not to take on too much of the news because it is a real, you know, time waster. It just sucks your energy. So some of the things that I know, what I try and do is just look at what is it that I can do myself? What can I be cause over? What can I make happen within what I'm doing? And I like to write a lot. I've got this is my book, right? It's full of notes, and I like to write, and that's my process for how I get my ideas down on paper. But so some of the things that I have taken, and we sort of did last time when we had a lockdown, is look at this opportunity for a bit of stillness, maybe in your business, to have a look at what your business is doing. Someone made a comment in the chat about working on your business, because you know, this isn't the first crisis you can, oh, look, Thanks.
One good thing about lockdowns.
Yeah.
Puppies at work.
Okay.
Puppies at work.
I wish you weren't anyway. But she, you know, it isn't going to be the first crisis you're going to suffer. And look, if anything else, it's a bit of a drill for the resilience of you as a founder, if you're a founder, or your company or your business model. And it is it's a way of maybe force testing the cracks that you've got in your business model, because it's going to happen one way or another. You might lose a customer, you might lose a partner, you might lose some, you know, technology, you might lose something. So, you know, it doesn't go away really. So we sort of got to build up resilience to understand using this opportunity as a test case. I mean, we're nowhere near as bad as some of the countries. Like, we sent to some of the countries that have absolute devastating lockdowns and there's no government support. All right. So our customers are sending money furiously. So ironically, our numbers are up. Okay. So we're one of these businesses where, because we're digital, we've benefited from COVID, but still we have growth problems now. So that's our issue to manage. So that's something that is a thing we've really got to manage. But look, one thing I would say is stay connected with your networks, with this network, and also your team. One thing we're sort of finding is we're used to working in an office together, being in the same room. And it is a thing, if you're not doing that, you're isolated a little bit, and there's so much value that comes from those subtle interactions. So we try and keep a discipline on what we do. We run our meetings as we have been, and we talk to each other as much as possible and keep in touch. Anyway, I think I might leave it there, Craig.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Harold. And I think that, you know, with your team, being intentional about those informal things that used to happen, you just bump into each other and say, oh, by the way, can you do this? So you have to be a bit more structured and organised. And instead of just sort of wandering over, we have to organise a meeting or send a chat message. And there's a few different mechanisms, and people will find out what works for them. Anyone who wants to ask some questions from the audience, or got any other thoughts you wanted to chip in on in response to what Harold said, Serena?
I think, Harold, that was really brave and courageous of you, talking about some of the challenges you've had. And it is interesting how, you know, we've seen so much through these disruptive events that trade is not what we expect. Like, you know, you probably wouldn't have expected your business to be taking off in terms of remittances. Who would have thought that we'd have supply chain issues because semiconductor chips are globally nearly sold out? Like, there's just so many oddities that you just can't pick. And the pace of the change is just, it can be overwhelming at times. But I guess there's, you know, a few things I wanted to add too, which is, and I guess having had family in Melbourne during lockdown, I saw their change in emotions that they were going through. And I think this is normal. Like, we're a week and a bit in. Canberrans are fairly, you know, resilient. We've got a good sense of humor, but this may change. Like, when it goes from, oh, it's only, you know, 1 week, it's only 3 weeks, maybe it's 6 months, like, who knows? Like, then you go through all those different cycles of grief. Like, you know, there's between 5 and 7, depending which model you go on. But, you know, at the moment, we're probably a bit of, you know, shock, disbelief, and a bit of acceptance, but it can go into denial. It can go into anger, you know, all those sorts of things that you may be experiencing personally, people around you experiencing personally, and also your customers in your community. And this is where it's really important, especially for those of you like me who have brand-based businesses, to make sure that you are connected with the pulse of what your community is going through. So, you know, in my case, you know, because I you know, talk about personal finance in the Joyful Frugalista. So there's a lot of people who are doing it tough, who tend to gravitate to my brand. So if I'm like, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine, just invest in Bitcoin, it'll all be fine. That's not investment advice, by the way. I don't actually invest in crypto, but this is just, you know, an example. Like, you're not hearing where they're at, you're not supporting them. And when this is through, they're not going to be with you on the journey. So it's really important to be connected to the pulse of how your community is. You know, it might not be the time to hard sell to them. And in fact, probably hard selling is never really very effective anyway, but just arguably, but to really just understand that these range of emotions, strong emotions that you will be going through yourself and others as well.
Fantastic. And sometimes you know, some of the problems are emotional like that, and we just have to be looking out for it. And I think I want to come back to the beginning one of the things I said, which is looking what is the problems for your business? What are the things you should worry about? And certainly, you know, the physical and emotional health of your team has to be right, you know, will definitely needs to be, and yourself needs to be right up there. You can't do anything for your business if you can't look after yourself. What other, you know, has anyone got any tips they want to share about that's really, they've found that helpful?
Can I say something?
Oh.
So just to add to Serena's comment, again, this is sort of my reality, but fear is a thing. And, you know, it's there. And I think for the first time really ever in this sort of COVID era, I hit a bit of fear a few weeks ago, and I realized, wow, it's in Canberra now. And we actually stopped from operating. We've never really had to probably experience that like other cities have or countries. And, you know, you've got to, I think you've got to just experience that and maybe not resist it or do whatever you do to understand it. But it's a thing, and it affects you, affects your nervous system, and it can pervade your team. And when we had the first series of lockdowns, the first thing we did was we got everyone together, and we really looked at the worst case, and we looked at runway and are we going to keep our jobs? Can we keep our jobs? And we made it very clear that we would keep everyone's job no matter what. And even again today, this time around, we've done a similar thing. People know where we're at. Everyone knows our numbers. So, you know, to try and eliminate any of that fear, that unconscious fear or a reactive fear that you might have there, because those thoughts are powerful. And you know, we're on a growth phase now, so we can't afford to have sort of, I don't know, it's a heavy word, destructive sort of ideas flowing through and that sort of uncertainty, because we want to be strong and hold our customers there and make sure they're okay and know that we're operating and able to get money, say, through to people that they're trying to help. So, but look, again, one thing we did is just map out all of our options and worst case scenarios. Maybe I'll come back to that later, Craig, and use my recent example.
Well, yeah, but just on that last one, Harold, I think naming things gives you a power over them. And if you name a worst case scenario, sometimes think, oh, we shouldn't even mention that possibility. But there's a time to actually name all of these and then say, actually, should we be worried about that? Why would we be worried? Actually, that's less likely to happen. And so there's a time and a place to actually for you to deal with, to name and deal with the elephant in the room, if that makes sense. If, you know, if your team or your business partners or other key people are really worried about something, but it's sort of almost too scary to mention, I really will encourage people to find a way to have that conversation. So look, I know it's a difficult subject, but let's talk about, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to realize that things aren't as bad as you thought. And by the way, if you realize things that are as bad as you thought, or even worse, you needed to have that conversation now anyhow. All right. So, and bad news only gets worse over time too, by the way. If news is bad today, and if you wait, it'll be worse when you tell it. Right? News never gets better. You know, if you're behind on your cash flow now, you're going to be further behind next time you need to go and report to your board or something like that. That makes sense. Really keen to involve anyone in the community who wants to, whether it be on the chat or unmute yourself and ask out a question or make a comment that you think will be relevant to people. Really keen to broaden that conversation out.
It's Kishwa here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm in my PJs. I've got my COVID hair on, so that's why I'm not putting the video on. But I still thought it was important for me to dial in, because why it's important to kind of plug into events like this is you can get really isolated. And yeah, so I thought, do I get changed or whatever? And I thought, no, I can put the video off and still engage in the discussion and hear what's going on. And it's important to, I think, plug into discussions such as this to realize other people are going through similar feelings. For me, the challenge is how to stay engaged with my customer base, because my customer are government clients, and I'm used to meeting with them, booking appointments and meeting with them face to face. And a lot of those appointments have now been cancelled, mainly because they're busy putting out fires. And the second comment I was also going to make is it's sort of Serena touched on this a bit before, also being cognizant of, it's a bit of self-care, in the sense that there's a lot of people suffering from high levels of anxiety, and going down sort of pessimism. Well, so it's good to recognize one's limits as well when engaging with those people and being slightly protective. So being aware, not only acknowledging their feelings, but one's own capacity to deal with that, and so sort of say, look, sometimes I think it does then go into people needing some professional help. Just a year of a friend or a peer is not sufficient. So I think recognizing that as well, and I kind of rely on my own feelings, thinking, oh, this is getting a bit uncomfortable now, or, I don't feel like I'm the things I'm saying isn't resonating with that person, and that could probably benefit for talking to someone a bit more professional, because, yeah, and I tend to be quite optimistic. So, but recognize that I don't have those anxiety tendencies which other people will have. I'll go for a run and go, right, okay, I feel better, and get on with it. And so, yeah, recognizing those limits as well. So staying in touch with communities such as this, but on the other hand, I think recognize our individual limits to be able to support our staff, friends and peers in the entrepreneur and small business community is also important. So that's my piece.
Oh, look, thank you so much for sharing that, Kishwar. And I bet Serena's just dying to, and Harold are just dying to come in with a couple of comments or thoughts on that. While they think of something, I'm gonna say just one of the things you mentioned, which was your customers are very distracted at the moment, dealing with federal government fighting with fires. I think that's something that we do have to think carefully about how to do better with. And guess what? It's the subject that it's part of the subject we're going to talk about next week, which is actually, what are the tactics we can use to be as best as possible at connecting to those customers or partners who are very distracted or got their own problems at the moment. So we're going to delve into that one a bit more. Serena, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, Kishwar, for sharing so much. And I can't wait for your podcast when it's out. I know it's going to be fabulous. But, you delved in, you mentioned this concept of, so many people who are dealing with anxiety. And I'd mentioned earlier the different phases of that. But, anxiety does have a physical effect on our bodies too. And one of the big effects it has is on our mental reasoning capacity. And this is, there's a reason for this, because, if we're, fleeing away from a bear or, a marauding army, our blood supply goes to our muscles where you need it first. It's not going to our brain. So there is a reason why when people are in this, dealing with heightened stress, it is really difficult to make decisions. It can feel difficult to make decisions about your own business. Like, you might have to make decisions, but it's hard to do that. So that's why you really do have to confront, deal with that self-care and prioritize that, because you won't make good decisions about your business or give good advice to other people, because you literally can't. Like, the blood flow is not going to the brain where it needs to be. So you're not going to be able to do that. And I guess another thing I wanted to say too is, based on experience from last year, is be very careful with that P word. And by P, I mean that pivot word. Now, we all know that as entrepreneurs, and as innovators, that it is really important to be agile, and nothing's permanent. You constantly need to be refining your business model, taking risks, when they fail, doing something else. But for some people, they're still in that grief phase. Their business is like their baby they've given birth to. It's like an extension of themselves. And they're still in that phase of grieving that loss before they can move on to something else. So if you just come up, along and go, hey there, Mary, just pivot. It's not meeting them emotionally where they're at, and you're likely to probably lose friends over it. I know I've unintentionally offended someone. So just, while we're supporting each other, just be aware that some people may not emotionally be ready to let go and to pivot, and it's their journey. You worry about yourself. It's their journey in terms of where they're at.
Awesome. Harold?
Sorry, just unmute. Look, our company's a classic. We've pivoted 16 times. I shouldn't really, laud about that. But I do take your point, Serena, about pivoting. So look, maybe if you don't mind, I'll share a recent example with something that happened with us. So we constantly have problems in getting harassed by banks with what we do. So, and recently one of our banking partners pulled out on us very quickly without any warning. And normally people wouldn't talk about that in our industry, but it's pretty much public knowledge now that this happens. So you can imagine for a company like ours, it's devastating. It's the one risk assessment we did on our business plan that was the total death of the company. All right, without a bank account, we can't function. And look, when it happened, like again, with my millions of lists and in my book and everything, seriously, the first thing whenever this sort of thing happens is we do ask ourselves the questions, do we go on? Or do we, so there were two options. Do we continue or do we not? And it's okay not to continue. But having made the decision that we would pursue the path of continue, you could list all the options. And we didn't get down, it was A and B, and then it was 1 to 2, and then it was 3, 4, 5, 6, and within them there are a million characters. So we didn't even have to end up going down many of the options before we got a solution. But the fact that we had processed through all the pitches and all the ideas and all the failures and all the devastation and the destruction, and this was about a month ago, so it was before COVID hit. And it's sort of, we're just coming out of it now, but that, I don't know how else to describe it. It is intensely personal and emotional. And I just keep saying, I don't think it goes away. I think you just need to arm yourselves with some techniques and tools and networks of friends to share with, because I'm pretty much, the one thing I notice about most of the entrepreneurs, even some of the ones that are a bit more sort of senior in terms of what they've done in their career, they've all gone through the same thing. I'm amazed at even some of the fireside chats, Craig, the number of founders you've had on there that have said they've run out of money. And there's the people that you would swear would never have had that sort of problem. And they pretty much all say that they've run out of money and they've probably had a crisis.
They've all had tough times. Glenn Keys tells a horror story about that, for example, a very, very successful local business person, just to name one. So look, and it is part of that thing. I think, Serena, you were sort of saying, you get a bit anxious and it echoes around in your head and stuff like that. I really want to encourage people to find the right safe person they can tell their thoughts to, preferably somebody who's got a bit of an understanding, but not necessarily somebody who wants to tell you what to do. Because you don't actually need to be told what to do. What you need to do is to talk your thought process out aloud, and immediately it gets better. And if you're talking to somebody who's got a little bit of relevant experience, they might make 1 or 2 comments that help you to think a bit more and get out of that fight or flight syndrome and into, step. So really do please, reach out. And by the way, that's going to be my challenge to you. I'll tell it right now. My challenge to everyone, the weekly challenge, your challenge for this week is to think of one challenge, one difficulty you have, and I want you to tell it out loud to somebody. Tell it out loud to somebody who you trust, you've got a bit of a relationship with, start easy and tell them, look, I'm worried about the following, or I'm not sure what to do about the following, or, whatever it might be. So Harold could have, in that horrible story, the really difficult story he just told, could have said, look, I'm not even sure if we can continue because of this, right? And if he'd said that to me, I wouldn't have been able to point him to the solution he did find. I didn't know. I don't know, but at least, but just talking, just at least, saying it out loud to people, and sometimes within your team is the right people, and sometimes outside of your team, I'll leave that judgment to you. But I want you to actually challenge yourself to say it out loud to somebody, and it will help so much with that that issue that Serena described so much more eloquently than I could. It all rattling around in your head, and you don't know what to do, and it all gets magnified, and it all gets murkier. And if you say it out loud, it often gets so much clearer. So I really want everyone to think of one business challenge, one challenge in your business that you've got, you're a bit stuck on, and who is a person you could say it out loud to. And that doesn't sound like much of a challenge, but that is my weekly challenge to you for this week. Do that. Does that make sense? Can I quickly mention the beautiful story that Tom's told on the chat as well, and just seeing the local cafe providing food and drink into the testing queue. And I think it's good to be refreshed by those stories as well, and there are awesome things happening and people do amazing things. And I think that should, refresh us a bit as well. So, I think that's what I want everyone to be thinking about and doing. Who else would like to add into this conversation? Go, Tom.
Well, I guess the other thing is understand you'll have conflicted and mixed feelings. When I first saw the queue of people across the road, I was fearful. They're getting tested? They got the virus. Am I going to get it because they're outside my front door? Then I felt guilty about that. These poor people are standing out in the freezing cold. And then I saw the sign from the cafe saying, we've got hot food, hot drinks. And there were people sitting on fold-up chairs and reading books and all of that. And that made me feel a bit better. And I guess the main thing I'd suggest is we just remember that our work colleagues and our customers are people, and we should ask them how they are when we're talking to them.
What a beautiful story. Thanks, Tom. You told it much better than I tried to put in. And look, and by the way, the one thing I want to add to ask people how they are, ask if you could help. But the one thing I want to add to that is make sure it's easy for them to say, "I'm not right now, Craig." Because sometimes it's not the right moment for somebody to share their difficulties, and we should be respectful of that. But it's so easy to just say, "How you going?" And if somebody wants to unload, just listen. It's as simple as that.
Can I ask a question of Harold and Serena?
Go.
Entrepreneurs, it's really easy to fall into a kind of bit of a spiral where there's so much going on. What techniques have you both learned to kind of prioritize how to deal and manage with some of these challenges, and know where to go first when you're trying to manage a lot at once?
Me first, Serena. That's a very good question, Zach. I'm glad you asked. Again, it never seems to go away. So I guess I pride myself on being very organised, like I try to be, and systematic. But in my book here, right, every now and then I do always write down what's important, like the most important things that I should have my attention on in my role. What should I do? And I do that every few months. I really go through and make sure I know what's important. I mean, I now lead a team, so it's a little bit different. It's not just founder only. So my role changes. So I have to replace myself in all the other roles that I used to do. And I try and not get involved in things that my team should be doing. I let them get on with what they're supposed to do. But that outside perspective is a constant thing that has to be reset, I think, and not get distracted by things that aren't part of your profile. And I live on to-do lists. So this is I still print, I can't see. I still print. I still have not found anything better than a printed list. all right? And I constantly update it, and it changes all the time. I've got one numeric, then alphanumeric, and now I've gone into Greek. 1, 2, 3. But anyway, it's a process, and sometimes things disappear off the list. But generally, you know, it's a challenge. But it is constantly revisiting what's important. That's a question I ask myself: well, what's important? Because I mean, Craig, you talked about it before about distraction. I think distraction is a really big thing, and I don't think we talk about it enough as entrepreneurs about putting attention on stuff that is not important. And one of the things we learned from Kiln, and it's a bit different from every other thing, is we were all about growth. When it came to that phase of our company, we got a bit of product market fit. Okay, so we knew we could scale it. So then we got down to what was the one thing that's important for our company, and it was a growth number. And what's the number? Craig will talk about this, I'm sure, at some other stage. But what's the growth number for our business? And that is all we worry about, right? And we still, to this day, is the growth number we worry about, and everyone knows what it is, and everything else takes care of itself. But it's like you have this simplicity, and then you just don't get distracted about too much, that too many degrees of separation apart from that. But I don't know, I hope that answers your question to some degree. Over to Serena.
I thought you were going to talk about your big long list, which I guess is part of it. Well, I definitely have shiny object syndrome, and you know, this is a real issue for me. You know, I'm also, you know, a mother of 2 children, and my husband's currently in WA, so he was going to be there for 9 weeks. It looks like he'll be there for 11 or 12 weeks, so he's not back for several weeks. So I'm, you know, doing the whole homeschooling with 2 children. I've just started a new part-time job, which is quite intensive. And, you know, then we went into lockdown, and then plus I've got 3 things I'm doing. So it's a bit nuts. So I have the strategic and, you know, the goals, and then I have what I actually do, which is quite a bit different. So strategically, I do like an annual plan, and then, you know, about every 6 months, I'll look at that. So, you know, I actually have, you know, the strategic goals for the year. You know, I do set a lot of goals, but I usually find there's only about 3 that I'll actually stick with, which is interesting to observe. And it's usually the clearer they are, the better. Like last year, for instance, my goal was to pay off my mortgage, and I was very clear on that goal. So I achieved that. This year, it's to get to a certain amount that I want invested now that we've paid off that debt, and I'm very clear on that goal, and I look at it all the time. And so that tends to inform decisions. So I just note that I do that, but I still set way too many goals. But usually it's only about 3 that I actually focus on. Of those 3, there's usually one that's the main one. And that's kind of how I do that. I then have both an online and a paper system. So the online system is I'm using a project management tool. I mean, there's many around. I use a suite of products called Zoho. So I have Zoho projects. So, you know, within, you know, everything from my home to, you know, my community, because I'm active in my Zonta Club. So I'm vice president this year. So there's a number of things I'm doing there, to my 3 businesses, blog posts, random blog post ideas. I put it all in there. And that's actually a great way of storing those random ideas that I have. Like, oh, I could write a blog post about marmalade. Well, I'm probably not going to do that today, but it's in there. And then, you know, and that's really useful to have, because you might have those times in your life where you've got, say, 15 minutes spare before an appointment, and you can go through and go, oh, that's right, I needed to call someone about something, or I needed to do something online, or I needed to pay that, whatever. And you've got a list of things there. But honestly, and then I also have a paper diary where I have my weekly this is my weekly to do, and this is day to day. And, you know, every day I get out a ruler and I divide it into half. So half is my household things, because like I said, you know, homeschooling and, you know, cooking dinner and all of that sort of stuff takes up a lot of time, plus, you know, my business thing. So I, you know, have them on each side, because, you know, there's no point ignoring that I don't have household stuff, because I've still got to manage that as well. So I have both of those. But some days I'm just, you know, like, it's just my mind is, I'm in an anxiety state. There's just so much that's happening, and I don't even know what to start with. So I just get a random piece of paper and a nice big fat pencil or pen. Like recently I've been using a blue one. Why blue? I don't know. And I just write down all of the tasks, and then I just pick maybe about 3. And I'll do those 3, and I'll tick them off the list, and then I just keep going. And so, like, I've got the strategic, and then sometimes it's just, well, but today my brain tells me that this is what I feel like doing. It's not to say I don't go back to those strategic, but, you know, I don't know why, but this works, because sometimes, you know, I'm worrying too much about the things I should be doing. But at the moment, this is what I feel like doing. And I think too, that when we're in anxiety mode, you're probably not able to to mentally cope with some of those bigger things. I had a boss who once described it as, if you had a bad day of something, you know, like for instance, say you've had a, you know, massive fight in your household and you're not in a fantastic mood. That's a basket weaving day. So that's the sort of day where you will do process things that don't require you to really be, you know, super positive and talking to people. So having, you know, a whole list of, you know, tasks that you have in your online project management means that then you can pull them off depending on, you know, what your deadlines are and actually what you're feeling like that day. So it's a bit of a mix there between the actual strategic and the tools and the what I actually do.
Awesome. The time's getting away from us. We've just got a few more minutes. Anyone want to throw in a last comment or question for Serena and Harold? I'll throw in my time management tip, which is sometimes you've got to decide what not to try and do today. Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, and also writing your list, and there's a couple of things. Firstly, I mean, one of the things that you may or may not have done, being as you guys are both good leaders, is taking the focus off yourselves and started focusing a bit more on your people. I'd be interested in hearing a couple of comments about that. But also, you know, you've also got to get your brain right. I always remember someone saying, have you got stinking thinking? And how are you cleaning your brain? So how often are you reading good stuff or listening to pods that are positive? And I think that might be something to share on these catch-ups. If you listen to a really good positive catch-up, maybe share it. I recently just listened to one called the 5 a.m. Club. Probably going to give most of you the heebie-jeebies, getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, especially during a pandemic. But it does actually sharpen the pencil for the day, I've found. So far, I've only just started. Talk to me in a couple of weeks. See how we go. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that, you two.
Well, I think it's really important. Sorry, I'm talking over the top of you, Harold. It's really important to shift your mental, you know, mindset, and you do that however you can and whatever works with you. It might be binge watching, you know, TV, but like, you know, positive TV. Through this particular lockdown, believe it or not, I've been reading romance novels, like the trashier the better. And it all started when I heard about the death of Valerie Parv, who was a Canberran who'd sold 34 million copies of her book. She'd been very prolific with Mills and Boons and Harlequin Press. But you know what? It's so light, it's so fluffy, it's so positive. It always ends with, you know, the nice diamond ring. So you know what? Like, you know, I'll spend a little bit of time reading that, but then the next day I will be positive and I'm focused and it works for me. Don't necessarily recommend that for all the entrepreneurs here, but it's whatever you like that's going to lift your mood.
Thanks, Serena. So like personally, I do some meditation. So I find that is very important for creating stillness and separating from, say, physical things. What else? You asked something profound, Duncan, and I forgot. What was it? Oh, what am I listening to? Yeah, or whatever. Not so much podcasts, but reading. I've really started reading, and I juggle between some business books like biographies, CEOs, things like that. I mean, some of them are pretty boring. Some of them are all based about their ego. Some, you know, and I'll mix it up deliberately, politics. But it's like people who lead. And this is one thing you said before about the emphasis changing. So really, I've got this thing on my wall that tells the priorities of the CEO. There's like about 5 things, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head now, of course, but one of them is to, you know, make sure your team are looked after and make sure there's enough money in the bank, basically, to pay everyone. That's the simplicity of it. And everything else is sort of paperwork, really. So, you know, I might share it with you, Duncan, and you can circulate it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll just add one thing. You know, most entrepreneurs are flat strap, even when you're busy during COVID. And one of the ones that I've got hold of, someone recommended to me, was Blinkist. I'm probably all heard of it, but I got back onto that recently, and for me, it's excellent because you can get through a book in 20 minutes. And if you really love it, go buy the book, get involved in it. And, but it's really cool. In 20 minutes, you can have, you know, it can change your attitude, actually. You can try to, you know, 1 or 2 little points can make you feel a little bit better. So I don't know if you guys are all over that, but it's something I find just helps me when I'm really busy.
Well, what I do, I actually get a paper book. I can't handle more electronics. I've had enough of it. I don't have an iPad. I'll get a paper book and I'll sit outside and light a fire and read the book, right? And just to disconnect completely from my world of electronics, which is just full on. So I force myself to disconnect I really do. And that's what works for me.
I'm going to go down the beach tomorrow just for you and do exactly that. Call it my fire.
Sorry,
But
I have a
for
question.
those of you that don't know, I'm stuck in Queensland. I know it's terrible. You feel bad for me, but
Manjula, nice and quick,
I'd
because
rather
we're
be there
nearly
with
out of
me.
time.
Yes, yes, yes. So all of you, you're talking about, taking time, reading and doing stuff. Don't you feel guilty about that? Oh, this is the time where I could have done much work. This is pending and I'm here reading a book or watching something or etc. How do you deal with that?
Well, of course, you feel guilty. You can't stop the thoughts. So you just know that it's actually part of the process of rehabilitation.
Yeah, I really want to encourage you, Manjula, and everyone to see looking after yourself as a core activity, a core part of the bigger plan. And it's not taking yourself away from your other goals. It's absolutely a part of your goals. And for me, if I see it that way, it helps a lot.
You've got to be able to reach and withdraw. All right. If you can't withdraw, you're stuck in it. You'll never get an outside perspective on something you're trying to solve. Like, you can't solve a problem from within it usually. And, I'm sure people know you just won't have the sort of separation from it to even get an outside point of view or think outside the square.
Yeah, of course you feel guilty. Even I feel guilty. And I might add too that I do read on serious subjects quite a lot, particularly for preparation for my podcast. Sometimes escapism is good, but you reach a point of overload where you really can't do that much more. Like, there's some nights I'm sitting by my computer, late at night, and I'm just not functioning. I'm just not actually getting anything done. You've just actually got to stop, because you can actually make mistakes. When you're so tired and you're so anxious and you're not in that right frame of mind, it's actually negative work rather than positive work.
Look, and I think, somebody said, ask yourself, are you okay? And I think some self-reflection, you've got to judge about yourself. Do I need this? If I don't do this, my work is going to go worse. I think if you say it like that, you know what the answer should be. So we're nearly out of time, and I do want to really respect by keeping onto time. So I've just quickly put on the screen what we're going to do next week. I also quickly want to say what refreshes me into that question. You know what's refreshing me? It's actually the people I talk to, and all your thoughts and journeys, and so the community, I think, can be part of that support for everyone. You need to go and sit by the fire and read a book as well, or whatever it is that works for you as individuals. But anyway, I just wanted to say I love the community, and I want you to feel like you're all part of a journey. Okay, and similar journeys, and know that other people are sharing similar experiences. I think that should help you. So, which of course is my call, segue into reminding people to keep connecting with each other. We've got First Wednesday Connect coming up in a little while. The LinkedIn group, if someone from the team can put it in the chat, is a way of, and on that LinkedIn group, do not be shy to post something that's not just beautiful or self-promoting, as is often the case on LinkedIn. Ask for help or whatever it might be. It's all good. And last thing is, next week we've got a really, as I mentioned earlier, we've got this theme of engaging customers from home within the context of the lockdown. And we've got Michelle Melbourne, and I didn't even ask you yet, Duncan, but I'm actually going to use you, Duncan, as a panelist. I hope that's okay, mate. Really talk about your experiences in that area. And I hope everyone will keep engaging that, find it a little bit of an assistance with your toolkit of looking after yourself and your business. So please sign up for that. Refer friends to this chat. Please do that. And lastly, remember my challenge to you. Talk to somebody about a difficult problem. Actually, just ask someone. Tell them, can I just tell you about my difficult problem? I really hope everyone will do that. Any last thoughts? I can take that off now. Oops.
Craig, just thanks for organising this and keeping community going. And
It's a
connected.
pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. And thanks everyone for being engaged. And please, everyone, come along next week with more questions, lots of questions, and bring some friends along as well and see if they enjoy the same sort of process, which I hope they would.
A very, very big thank you to Harold and Serena as well. Your insights have been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thanks for reminding me, Zach. One should always thank one's guest. No, thank you very much, Harold, Serena, and you're such wonderful people and very reliable and able to jump in on this on very short notice, which is super appreciated.
Not going anywhere at the moment, so it's all right. It's easy. All right.
So thanks everyone for coming along, and see you soon.
See you later, everyone.
Hit me up, anyone who wants to chat.
Oh yeah, reach out. Don't be shy.